What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, I want to start with your headline today, which simply says, A two Jagmeet, as in Julius Caesar. Please explain to me what this is about.
Well, as in Justin Trudeau trying to sort of like answer questions while removing the handle that's sticking out of his back. Thursday night, Jagmeet Singh, leader of the federal NDP, is addressing the Broadbent Institute in Ottawa. And he starts talking about the carbon tax. And he starts accusing Justin Trudeau of using the climate crisis as a political wedge. And he says it can't be done by letting working families bear the cost of climate change while big polluters make bigger and bigger profits. This is his quote. He says, we all lose if we make Canadians choose between an affordable life and fighting the climate crisis. This is clearly in response to the campaign. Some say it's a campaign of disinformation, but by God, if it is extremely effective by the Poilievre conservatives that basically Justin Trudeau's carbon tax is dragging this country to hell in a handbasket. And it was very interesting to hear. And yet, Mr. Singh says his party still maintains some kind of control on carbon emissions. But for him to have said this, I think, I think finally it's dawned on Jagmeet Singh that Justin Trudeau's problems, and they're big, are his problems. Because if it looks as if because of whatever it is he's doing, as far as I'm concerned, Justin Trudeau's apparent campaign to scuttle the federal Liberal Party of Canada leads to him handing the country over to Pierre Poilievre on a silver platter, a lot of NDP supporters will turn around and say, listen, I'll vote the Liberal. I won't split the vote. Let's try and forestall any kind of a return to a Conservative government. If that happens, as bad as things are going to be for the Liberals, they'll be 10 times worse for the NDP. And I get the expression that what happened last night was Mr. Singh, quite frankly, engaged in an exercise that we like to refer to in these parts as saving the furniture, realizing that there's a huge disaster about to strike, putting on his life jacket, and hoping he doesn't hit the water too hard on his way off the boat.
I wonder, Jim, if this is the signal of the beginning of the end of any kind of NDP support for Justin Trudeau. You know,
you raise an interesting possibility because the idea... I know it has become such a threadbare expression in Canadian politics, hold your nose and vote for X party. I think a lot of people out there are just bloody fed up because they're discovering that the stink from one party is, in fact, worse than that they're trying to avoid. And I think a lot of people are just turning around and saying, no, I'm not going to be pushed into voting for someone I don't like for policies I have no confidence in simply because the other guy is worse. And I'll be frank with you, we were both there together, Aaron, but I'll leave it to you to tell your take. But my take on the 2015 elections, that's exactly what happened. And I told you at the time, Justin Trudeau did not win that election. Stephen Harper lost it. I will maintain that till the day I die. And I think that the same thing will happen for anybody who beats Justin Trudeau in the next election. And quite frankly, it could be Pierre Poilievre or anybody else. The line forms that they're right. The Liberals are in huge trouble. They probably know it. I don't know why they're too frightened to mutiny, but the fact of the matter is when you've got Jagmeet Singh, whose party is part of this Entente Cordiale, that's supposed to keep this party in the government in power until next year, is turning around and saying the fundamental elements of this party's platform is flawed and is using working Canadian families. I think Mr. Trudeau's got a lot more problems than the foreign interference probe to take with him into this weekend.
I just wonder, Jim, obviously the strategy now, and it plays out, it seems, every single day. Today, a big housing announcement, not just here, but in other parts of the country as well. It's almost as if they've come up with this idea, they, the Liberals, federally, that, what's that expression? If you throw enough stuff against the wall, whatever sticks.
Yeah.
It seems here, it's like, let's make an announcement every day. The budget is up, by the way, next Tuesday. We're not that far away. But I would guess most of the important items in that budget have already been disclosed, setting himself up to not take, I guess, a lot of reaction to what's going to be in the budget because we already know all this money that's being spent. And he thinks that's a winning sort of proposition here.
But if there's one thing that we seem to be learning from the polls thus far is that those walls are made of Teflon. There ain't nothing sticking to it. The announcements are not helping, especially when you start going into multi-billion-dollar announcements that are so abstract. Even the people responsible for writing your speech aren't quite sure what the words mean. This is a huge, obvious, demonstrable disaster in the making. I was about to say for Justin Trudeau, but for the Quebec Liberal, for the Canadian Liberal Party, and for the Liberal cause in Canada, from one end to the other, this is a huge disaster. I have never seen this much bad news, bad luck, and ominous, bad omens lining up at the same time for the Quebec for the Liberal Party of Canada ever. And honestly, I think I'm not entirely sure now this government's going to survive into next year. I'm not entirely sure whether a lot of what we thought we could rely on in terms of duct taped political alliances will last past the summer.
So do you think that, I asked you this the other day, are you looking perhaps at Justin Trudeau pulling the plug early and calling an election, or is that off the table?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know, because normally when I try to make a prediction, it's based on a set of circumstances with, that you can look back on it, and there's precedent and there's a track record for some things happening. Right. Here, he, honest to God, seems to me to have no plan whatsoever. I know his biggest fans are saying, oh, no, he's playing a very, very, very deep game. Well, I'm sure he is, but guess what? He's somewhere below the Pacific Trench at this point, and he's going to need some help coming out of there because nobody can figure out what he's doing. And as I say, Exhibit A, Jagmeet Singh, slowly but surely putting a lot of daylight between him and Justin Trudeau is not a very good way to go into this weekend for the Liberals.
All right, let's move on provincially, and then I want to get your take on the French Premier being here. But first of all, you're asking, can the Legault government withstand another bad poll?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because part of the exercise this week was Francois Legault seems to have derived tremendous enthusiasm, tremendous energy from being publicly patted on the head by the Prime Minister of France. But the fact of the matter is, we may have a poll next week. I've seen nothing to suggest his numbers are going to get any better. That his shtick, his spiel on making sure Quebecers stay scared is going to work any better this month than it did the last. And quite frankly, I'm a bit worried as to whether he is just simply going to, being Francois Legault, simply hit the gas even harder and make life even more difficult for immigrants, for Anglos, for people who don't agree with the CAQ. He's already said this week during the Mr. Attal's visit, there's too many immigrants. They don't follow our values. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you can't run around saying in 2024. People are a little too tense for that. And I don't care how politically desperate Francois Legault is. I don't care if he gets tossed from office. We don't need more fraying of the social fabric simply because one populist politician wants to hang on to power for another term.
So let me go to Gabriel Attal. Speaks in the National Assembly yesterday. Did he cross the line, Jim, as far as you're concerned, by sticking his nose into the whole Quebec politics issue of laïcité?
I think it's quintessential French politician's visit. Very nice and affable in Ottawa, where there's a real skin in the game issue for France, which is the free trade agreement they're trying to get signed between France and Canada and other European countries, and because that agreement was shot down, I believe, by the French Senate. And there is, of course, looking after those needy little colonials coming in and justifying whatever, not saying that your discriminatory, bigoted laws are great, but not saying they're terrible either. Just saying, you know what, we share the same the same concern for the French language. We share the same concern for secularism, even though that debate within France is not quite as cut and dried as people would have you believe, and it's certainly much uglier than the French would have, or the French government would have you believe. So you've got this, double discourse, as we say in these parts. So I thought that Prime Minister Attal simply played to type, and that's it. But as I say, it's going to be interesting to see if any of this glow rubs off on the next poll for Francois Legault and the CAQ. Personally, I doubt it very much.
By the way, I would just tell you, because he is the youngest prime minister France has ever had, and it was striking to me, he's kind of like Simon Jolin Barrette, but for France. That's the sort of take I got from him, right?
His English is much better than Simon Jolin Barrette. Let me tell you that.
Thank you, James Mennie. All right. Thank you, Jim. Have a good weekend. You too. It's true. Sad, but true.